What's up, YouTube? This is Lyle from Adrenaline DFS. Today we have Vincent as a special guest on the show. Vincent,
How's it going, guys? Glad to be here.
we will be breaking down the slate for this week, week 3. Week 2 was terrible for most people that knew anything about anything. So yeah, we'll be breaking this down position by position. We'll give our thoughts and reasons behind each play, and then we will go from there. So let's start with quarterbacks. All right, let's go, brother.
You want me to hit mine first?
Um, I mean, we can go basically over the first one, Pat Mahomes.
All right. Well, yeah, we both have him on our list, obviously. He's, I think, hands down the safest play, probably, right?
Even against Baltimore.
Even against Baltimore, I think the history has shown us that Pat Mahomes just doesn't not produce.
True.
So I would say he'd probably be your safest play at a quarterback if Price wasn't an object, right?
Right. I have him actually with Price and everything, still my number one quarterback. Just
Yeah.
because you know what you're gonna do.
I agree. Pat Mahomes is he's on my list. I only wrote down, 3 quarterbacks really that I felt as far as production wise comfortable with. So the quarterback in my opinion was the hardest one for me to come up with on plays that I really felt good about this week. So I don't know how you feel about your lineup here, but Pat Mahomes, I agree with you. I think we're in the same page here with him on how we feel about where he stands. So
Yeah.
what's the rest of your list look like?
Obviously with that game, I assume there's gonna be a lot of points scored. So Lamar Jackson on the flip side of things. Lamar is actually getting. Let me look. I think he's getting a little less ownership than Pat Mahomes. Yeah, so Pat's at like 8.6, which is super low. Like you will rarely see a Pat Mahomes slate with him at 8.6, and you got Lamar Jackson coming in at 7.4. So I'm definitely on his wagon as well, a little bit.
Do you feel at all like Lamar? I mean, given that statistic, right? You said Pat is 8.6 and Lamar 7.4.
Yeah.
So I personally think Kansas City defense is more prone to give up a big play than Baltimore's defense. So with the ownership being lower on Lamar Jackson, is that a better play by chance? I mean, they're 1 and 2 price tag on DraftKings anyways at 7,600 and 7,000 for Lamar Jackson.
Yeah.
Do you think it's a better play in any situation to play Lamar over Pat?
I do actually. So Pat Mahomes, if they're blowing them out, which they obviously can, I feel the game will go actually in Lamar Jackson's favor more because he has like what is he gonna do? He doesn't have like a star running back that's gonna just he can feed for points. So it's basically gonna be him running the ball, throwing the ball. It's all gonna be coming from his arm or legs. Um, so yeah, I think he can basically. He's the type to break the slate with a 60-point crazy game against Kansas City. To be honest, if it's a crazy shootout.
Yeah, that definitely could happen. I know I talked about it with you earlier in the week, and I'm sure a lot of the fans out there remember last year's Rams Kansas City game, 52 or some crazy number per team, went down to the final minutes of the game, just touchdown after touchdown. So I do think Kansas City is that team that if you're going to stack against Kansas City, gives up points, but they score points and there's no stopping them. So I don't think there's any wrong way to go there. I do think Lamar Jackson's the riskier play, but also maybe the higher upside because he could also. I just haven't seen enough of him yet. He's had 2 great games. He can do damage on the ground with his legs, and he's more do that than Mahomes is. But I just haven't seen enough sample size of him. And I was skeptical of Mahomes for a long time too. But Jackson, if he reverts to Jackson of last year, I don't think we see the production that we saw the last 2 games. But if he stays on the track that he's on right now, he could be deadly this week.
I agree. Also with Mahomes on the other side, Baltimore's missing a lot of players in their secondary, and Sammy Watkins lines up in the slot like 70% of the time, and they're arguably their number one cornerback is their slot corner, and he is out for the year. So could be a nice little Sammy Watkins show with that.
Yeah, I know you. That's that's a good look, and I think a lot of people out there look at the overall defense, and that's a good bit of knowledge to have, knowing that that slot corner is the number one corner. He's against Sammy Watkins, who is filling in as the number one receiver, highest target share on Kansas City right now.
By a lot.
Um,
Yeah.
Seeing that's pretty eye opening. So I'm sure when we get to wide receivers, I'm sure you have them in there somewhere. But that's good info. Good to hear that we know that Kansas City, who's already prone to giving up big points, or I'm sorry, Baltimore. You said Baltimore's number one corners out. I'm sorry, I misunderstood you.
Correct.
Baltimore's number one corners out, and that's their slot corner.
Yes. Well,
Okay,
he's
yeah,
arguably
that's
the
crazy.
one corner.
Okay, so on the flip side, Baltimore, tough defense. People are probably more prone then to be like, all right, I don't know if Sammy Watkins can produce at the level that he should be able to against a defense like this.
Yeah.
So great bit of info.
And that's why I'm assuming their ownership is really down. Like that's the
Right.
only thing I can think of.
Yeah, that would definitely play a role, right? Because I definitely factor in defense in matchups when I'm picking my lineups, and
Yeah.
Baltimore is one of those that has just historically been a nightmare matchup for any offense. But
Yeah, and then this number right here, I don't know if you can't see it on my screen, but next to Pat Mahomes, where it gives your opponent ranking, that third in red, people like to fade them things no matter who the player is to the left. So you could be, I'm definitely going to be over the field. If the field's 8% of Mahomes, I already told you pre-show, my baby. You know. Moving on from him, who's your next play?
Oh, you're gonna hate it so much. I'll talk about the next two.
Okay.
And realistically, I think it's just production and game flow. The next two that I have, Matt Ryan and Philip Rivers. Like I said, it's hardest for me to go through. Matt Ryan is one of those guys that he if you watch him, it's like, man, he's not having a good game, and then he secretly sneaks up 24 points on you, and it looks like he had a terrible game. And I think if you look at his game log, actually, I'm pulling it up here. He's week 1, 23.56 points, and then 25 points last week.
Yeah.
And had, in my opinion, not great games, threw 5 interceptions over 2 games, but still snuck up 25 points. Price tag is right in the middle of the pack, and they have an offense that allows him to be high powered if he has a good game. So if he's having bad games, putting up 25, I'm looking for that game that he steps out and has a 30, 35 point game. And then you got Philip Rivers. Philip against Houston, I think it's one of those games that could be a shootout. I see the game flow going into a lot of pass heavy. Philip's always been pass heavy. Receiving backs, great receiving core. There wasn't a really good standout quarterback outside of Pat Mahomes to me. So I looking in the middle of the pack and who I feel it could be a low risk, high upside play. Philip Rivers kind of stood out there for me.
Okay. Yeah, I agree with the Matt Ryan thing because I didn't even look at his numbers. In week 1, I knew that they got basically demolished, and he had 23 points, which and one of them was a little shady. Like he got a touchdown to Julio at the end where it wasn't really contested, but whatever. I don't hate either of those plays. If I had to pick one, I would probably lean more towards Atlanta or Matt Ryan with Atlanta, only because I feel like, which is a decent play in my opinion, that's priced down. Jacoby Brissett could be a really sneaky play this week against Atlanta. Atlanta gives up passing yards quite a bit. Brissett's been kind of doing pretty decent. He's got 5-1 TD to interception ratio right now. He hasn't put up monster numbers, but he's also played against Tennessee, who's a pretty stellar defense, and the Chargers, who have two of the best pass rushers in the game. Um, but that could be a sneaky little play, and he's only 5,200, so that's why I would say that I have more faith in Atlanta than um, Philip Rivers, because for some reason every time I think that game Houston's going to be in a shootout, it's 7-10 and 3/4 through, and it's like, what's going on here?
That's true. Houston's one of those teams you just don't know. Like they should be in shootouts all the time. They have the offensive power to be in a shootout and battle, which makes zero sense to me.
Yeah.
But it does happen all the time.
Yeah. Do you have any interest below there at like
I do.
the 5K?
Um,
Are you on the Kyle Allen train?
no,
No? Okay. Where are we at? What do you got?
no. So I've got 3 quarterbacks that I am like, hey, 2 of them, all 3 of them are going to be a shot, but 2 of them are more of a shot than the other. I'm willing to take a shot on Jameis this week. Given the matchup and the coaching there, he's had a terrible 2 weeks. See, where's Jameis sitting at price tag? Do you know off the top of your head?
Yeah, 54.
54 against the Giants, who have not been great against the pass this year so far. They gave up, they gave up Eli Apple. Was it last year? I believe. First rounder or so corner that they chose. They're in a rebuild kind of stage. They don't have a lot of talent. They did get some stuff out of Cleveland during that trade. And I don't know. I see Jameis. I'm ready for him to go out there and be Jameis and sling the ball, and see a good 350-yard game with 3 touchdowns. But below that, I'm not opposed to also starting Daniel Jones this week as a flyer, given the price tag. And I think New York wants to get out there and see what he can do. He had a good preseason. His price tag is good. With how murky the middle of the pack is, I'm not opposed to trying a Daniel Jones. And then my deep sleeper,
I like it.
I
already know.
Luke Falk, man.
Yeah.
I'm not opposed to starting Luke Falk this week. It's
Luke Falk is going to be really hard to get to with the weapons they have. They just don't have it. And Bill Belichick's going to take away Le'Veon Bell. Like, that's almost a given. That's what he does. That's what he always has done. They're deep, dude. They've given up 3 points all season. I know they played terrible teams, but the Jets are another terrible team overall.
They are.
I don't like Luke at all this week, though. If you are on the Luke train, he is getting 0.2% ownership, as well as Derek Carr, just so you know. But I do like Daniel Jones quite a bit. I think that game's going to be pretty high scoring. I think Jameis Winston's going to have a good game.
I'm looking for Jameis. On the Luke Falk thing, I do get the concern there. It's a super high flyer. He's the cheapest quarterback that's starting. I believe outside. That's not accurate. He's $100 more than Josh Rosen.
That's okay. Nobody wants him.
Luke Falk, though, I watched the game last week, and I talked to you a little bit about that, just kind of the other day, about how I thought he was the better quarterback over Trevor Siemian. And just watching the game and just surprisingly looking at statistics, he was 20 for 25 with an 80% completion rating. He looked sharp. Now I know the game was pretty out of hand, but it really wasn't. I mean, there was opportunities for him. He didn't throw any interceptions. He didn't throw any touchdowns, but he threw for almost 200 yards and a half. So I know that the Patriots have not given up much, but game flow should give them plenty of opportunity. So if you wanted to take a flyer, it's a long shot, but the price tag at 4,600, I believe I said.
Yeah.
For a quarterback that potentially could, have opportunity to throw 300 plus yards and is going to need to throw touchdowns in order to stay in this game. They don't have anybody behind them, so it's his game to win and lose. And I expect by any means the Jets are going to beat New England, but I think it's an opportunity for him to put up some points. but like I said, long shot. I'm really high on Jameis as my sleeper this week, which we'll tie into more a little bit later.
Yeah. I will have over the field on Luke Falk, just so we're clear, even though I say I don't really like it, but he's only 0.2% ownership. Definitely gonna have maybe 2 to 3% for me. Um, that basically wraps it up. Kyle Allen to me is another decent play. He's going at like 7.3 ownership though. So it's not crazy high, right? But with Pat Mahomes at 8.6, like he's in. I just don't know if I'll get to a lot of Kyle Allen, but that's basically where I'm at on quarterbacks. Let's see here. Let's go to running backs. Um, I will start with my favorite. Well, basically probably everybody's favorite, Ezekiel Elliott at 8,900. Let's see. He's getting his ownership. I know it's gonna be it's crazy high. Um, it's at 25.7% ownership right now for Zeke. He's actually the second highest owned potential starter. I think obviously the game flow should be in Dallas's favor from start to finish. Zeke should get plenty of carries. He might not see the third or fourth quarter because Miami is literally the worst team to ever step foot on a football field that I can recall, and I'm not kidding. My 0-16 Lions would have destroyed these guys. Um, it's just terrible. But I definitely see him getting 20 to 25 carries, probably like 130 in yards and 2 to 3 touchdowns. Um, how do you feel about Zeke?
No, I'm on board. Um, I the game, like you said, no brainer. I don't like his price tag. It's really up there, but I think his floor is so high and his ceiling is super high as well that there's no way you go wrong by picking him. Outside of the fact that if you're playing, GPPs, um, you may limit that a little bit because of the plays elsewhere. But if you're playing cash games, like Zeke's a no brainer. He's going to produce. There's no way he doesn't produce, barring an injury. And everything that coaching staff is saying is Zeke is going to get his full workload. Regardless, he's going to touch the ball 20 plus times. He had this week. He scored a touchdown in every game. I'd like to see him get a little bit more involved in the passing game like he has in prior seasons. I think that's going to happen. I don't think they keep him out of the passing game like they have kind of in the last 2 weeks.
Yeah.
So I think he's almost a must start if you have the money for it.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, you can't really go wrong with Zeke normally anytime, and especially against the worst team that I've ever seen play football. I'm not gonna be fading him by any stretch of the word. Definitely gonna have my Zeke shares. Um, who's your favorite running back that's priced pretty high?
It has to be Zeke as far as my favorite. I down two backs that I fitted in, and then I've got a couple picks that I feel good about. Zeke, we talked about him. No brainer. Outside of ownership, which according to what you were telling me earlier, is that his ownership actually isn't as high as I thought it'd be. So if that's the case, I think he's a solid play. Saquon is another one that I think if you're not taking, even if you are taking Daniel Jones, he's so involved in the passing game as well. That dude just produces. So Saquon's up there price wise. He's another one that I feel good about. I feel better about Zeke.
Okay.
If that with their price tag, I think is like $200 difference. If you have the extra $200, I go Zeke over Barkley.
Yeah, and I'm not gonna lie, I may swap my ownership a bit on Barkley's side more. Reason being is, yeah, he's $200 more, or yeah, $200 more, but he's also only at 8% ownership, 8.7. So compared to Zeke's 25.7, I mean, Saquon, to me personally, I think Saquon Barkley is the best running back in the league. probably followed by Zeke. But yeah, in that game, I think that game Daniel Jones is a lot better than people actually think he is. Like he had a really good preseason, but the kid is a pretty good player. Um, other than that, touching on the high end running backs, Christian McCaffrey against Arizona, he's going to see a lot of work this game. He may get smacked in the backfield a ton of times, but he's also the highest owned running back at 27.6% owned just because of the matchup. And Arizona throws the ball, highest game flow. I'm assuming this game is going to be backup quarterback. So basically, even with Cam, Christian McCaffrey is the best player on that field at all times. They need to give him the ball, and the only way they win is to get him the ball. So I really like him as
Yeah.
well.
I'm McCaffrey this week. Crazy dude's a beast. He's super involved. But I was just doing some digging. And this kind of played into the higher end running backs, I guess, but maybe not that price tag. So his price tag's up there. And somebody that I didn't have on my list initially, and I changed it, and similar reasons to avoiding McCaffrey is I put Le'Veon Bell on there. And the big thing that stood out to me is looking at the reason why McCaffrey is such a good play typically is not only does he get the touches, but he gets the receptions. And he's a deadly weapon. Le'Veon Bell is the second highest targeted running back in the passing game, above Christian McCaffrey. And it was pretty eye opening to me. And seeing his yards per game, he's close to 100 yards per game, even with the quarterback. Last week, he still put up a ridiculous number for the situation. I think McCaffrey, he like you said, he is the only player on that team that can do anything. I think they play this game and say take McCaffrey out of the game. That's how I think they handle this game. They may do that with the Jets as well. You said the Patriots may go that route, but I think Le'Veon gets involved in the receiving game quite a bit. Seeing game flow last week, watching that Jets game, till the very end, Le'Veon was catching passes and running the ball. They have nobody else that they're going to throw in there. Okay. So I had him over McCaffrey.
Nice. I really didn't pay attention to this too much either, but looking at it now, I kind of like a little Dalvin Cook action against Oakland, but that's a whole
Dalvin Cook. I think Dalvin Cook's going to be super high owned. I don't dislike him. I'm super high on him. He's a great running back. We've talked about that many times. Yeah. I just didn't mention him because he didn't stand out to me as the play, right? His price tag is where it should be. He's probably going to be owned high because his price tag is where it should be. He's going to probably have a pretty good game. I don't know if he'll have the games that he's had in the last 2 weeks, but he's going to probably have a good game. The scary part about him is what is Kirk Cousins going to do? He's had a terrible week. And had to really, week one, he threw the ball only like 10 times and he didn't have to throw. Last week he did, and he had a terrible game. So do they start stacking the box against Dalvin? I don't know. I don't know if that changes things a bit for him.
Yeah.
I think his upside is not as high as like the Zeke and Barkley situation.
I agree.
And I think he's going to be higher owned.
Yeah, I agree with that for sure. Yeah, and this will be the last week I'm predicting. Now, I don't know much, but I predict he'll never be under 8K again for the rest of the year. But we'll see. Let's see, any lower range players. Probably from let's see. Let's say like the 5,500 to 6,500 range. My favorite play in here is probably Marlon Mack. We all know how Atlanta is against passing. Well, not passing, but just running backs in general. And then the receiving back. Marlon Mack hasn't been getting targeted as much as we would like him to, obviously, as a play. He's only gotten 3 targets over 2 games. But I think that's going to increase. He's touching the rock 22.5% times out of the 2 games. Or 22.5 carries. Averaged between the 2 games so far. So he's going to touch it 20 times. Hopefully 5 receptions in there against Atlanta, because it should be a pace-up game. So I like him in that range. You got anybody in that little bit of range?
I do. I had a few in the running back situation. Um, I think I'll briefly touch on Sony Michel. I think game flow allows him a lot of touches, similar to last week. Don't know if he'll produce, but he's definitely worth a shot and maybe a lineup or two, especially if you're doing GPPs, because there's an opportunity for him to have 3 touchdowns at 6K. Um, the other two that I had in here in that range, actually one in the range you gave me, I think it's tough, but I think Joe Mixon is due. He's not had 20 touches in a game yet. In fact, I think he had 11 touches last week in 7 week 1. I think this game gives him an opportunity to get 18 to 22 touches. And I think it gives him a chance to get going. So I think he floats around that 5,500 range right now. His ability is well over that. It's just whether or not the Bengals offensive line can get him going. And then I'll go low range here, and I don't know if you got anybody. Do you have anybody low range?
I do, yeah.
Okay, well, I'll talk low range real quick, and then
Yep.
pass it back over to you. I've got two running backs that I am open to playing in the low range. One of them is Devontae Freeman. Again, in a similar situation to Joe Mixon, their running back core, I don't think have seen over 11 carries between the two games. And I took a peek at Ito Smith just to see he wasn't vulturing too much from him, and he really wasn't. So I think he has an opportunity to get going. And then Philip Lindsay for Denver, I think he's floating really low in the low 4,000s.
He really is 43.
So that price wise is an outstanding price for an outstanding running back, and I think he has opportunity to sneak in and be part of the passing game and running game. He runs well. The only thing I hate about Denver is the timeshare that they get, but if he produces, he could be a really valuable player at that price tag.
Yeah. So looking at Philip Lindsay, he only got 13 carries last week. Royce got 11. They both had above 5 targets. Royce had 7 targets, and Lindsay had, was it? Oh, 7 as well. So they both had 7 targets. So that's gonna sway me away from him quite a bit. I probably won't have more than 1% of Lindsay, to be honest. I just don't. He's a decent player, but for some reason, Joe Flacco's playing amazing right now. So I don't feel he's just getting the touches he needs to produce enough for me. To be honest, going through here, he's actually pretty high owned for what I assumed. I thought he was going to be lower than this, but he's at 5.8%. He's actually higher owned projected than Le'Veon Bell, and like Alvin Kamara. So I think I'm just going to avoid him, but who knows? We'll see where the numbers bring me, and I could be on him for all I know a little later in the week. I guess tomorrow when I start crunching things together. Devontae, dude, Indianapolis has one of the scariest to me defenses. I know you don't hear a lot about them, but they have a linebacker that is probably the best in the league. Um, that is just amazing. So he doesn't allow running backs to get yards. So even though they are the 31st ranked on here defense against the run, I just don't like Devontae Freeman, and I don't like how Atlanta uses him. I liked him more last year, or the year before, whenever he played full with Tevin Coleman, than now with Ito Smith. It's just a little weird to me. Um, in between that range, though, I mean, LaShawn McCoy, bro, if he gets his touches like he should, Andy Reid likes to give his players, whoever starts the game for Andy Reid normally plays 70, I think it was 70 or 80% of the game. So they acquire 80 to 70% of the touches from the backfield. He is dinged up a bit. A report today came out that said he won't get a full load probably, but they don't have it as like a for sure thing. But at his price range at what was that 5K? in that game where there's potential. It's definitely the highest pace game, I'm pretty sure. Should be the highest scoring game. Just, I mean, having him at 5K, I'm all about that. Um, and then, Frankie Gore. I don't like him. I don't like him as a fantasy player. I've never liked him as a fantasy player. He's one of my favorite running backs of all time, just because he used to play for the 49ers when I used to like the 49ers back in the day. And I just love the guy. Love how he's just keeps trucking, dude, at his age. But yeah, 4,400. Devin Singletary's out. Um, he's gonna acquire a lot of carries probably, and that game isn't like, oh my goodness, they could get blown out. I'm assuming the game's gonna be close. He should see the rock 20 times, and all we need is a few touchdowns out of him, and he's definitely 5x his value. How do you feel about them guys?
Um, yeah, I can see that. I lost you for a second. My system was going down, but you said Shady McCoy was the first one you were talking about there.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Um, I don't know how I feel about McCoy. I don't know your reasons behind that one. I haven't done a lot of research into it this week. He does have the Q next to his name. I think I heard you say he wasn't projected to get to the full workload this week.
Yeah.
I've man, I've just never been really high on any Kansas City running backs except for Kareem Hunt over the last couple of years because they has them so weird. Really productive, but I just don't know who it's going to be each week. And that's been kind of their theme the last 2 years, 2-3 years. But it could also pay off. I think it's high risk, high reward with him. Frank Gore, I love Frank Gore, man. I know you hate it. You typically hate him. It's awesome that you have him in here. Oh, there's my daughter, guys. Hold on one sec.
Yeah. Frank Gore, I will go to the grave saying that I do not like him in DFS. I never have. But it is weird. Like, I literally told myself I'll never play this guy again, and then I seen his price tag at 4,400 with the potential ceiling of, maybe a 25 to 30 point game potentially out of Frank Gore, which you haven't seen since the 49er days, essentially. So I'm
Yeah,
definitely on him a little bit.
he's somebody I've always liked, and we joke about it all the time. I think I joked last week about playing Frank Gore, and you're like, "Don't tell me you're gonna play Frank Gore."
Yeah.
He had a productive week last week at 16 points, so I don't hate the play. His price tag is really really good, and the opportunities will be there for him. The dude's he's not human. Don't know how he's still playing the league. It's awesome. I'll always love him. I'll be a diehard Frank Gore fan, but don't hate the play. Don't love the play, but don't hate it.
Yeah. I'm not gonna say too much about this, but I do have a feeling that Miles Sanders will get the bulk of the carries this week against Detroit. He is, to me, head and shoulders above the other running backs as far as the carries. I know you got the little Howard Love because he came from Chicago, but I just
Gotta love Howard, man.
when he touches the ball though, man, he makes stuff happen. And just the Philly, I know the Philly stuff, how they do their stuff, it just doesn't make sense. But Detroit is prone to just giving chunk plays to running backs. Trust me. Watch them every week for the last 10, 20 years, giving up just terrible numbers to running backs. Um, I think he's going to get a decent bulk load. Um, and then one sleeper play, we talked about this, is a little Tony Pollard action if that game gets crazy out of control. But for his value to even pay off for us, he's got to find the end zone probably one or two times, max or minimum one time for it to even pay off for taking a stab at it. But we talked about that, and
It
it's
definitely
not the
could pay
worst
off
play.
though.
Yeah.
He'll be in a few lineups for me. I didn't put him on my talking points today, but I agree. I think we talked about it earlier. Zeke is the play, but that game gets out of hand. Pollard's going to be sprinkled in throughout game flow, regardless, to give Zeke a breather. All it takes is good production during game flow, and then the game to get out of hand, and him to end up with 15 touches throughout this game. If he gets a pass here or there, he could end up with a 20+ point game, and he's got to be, price tag wise, he's got to be super low, and also ownership wise, he's got to be super low.
Yeah. He is. Let me check his ownership. I'm just curious. Yeah. He's projected as 0.9% ownership. I'm definitely going to have a few shares of him. Probably less than Vince, but that's fine. Moving on to receiver. Well, do you have anybody that you're just like you got a little feeling about in the running back group this week or anything?
No, not anything more than what we've talked about. Like I
Okay.
said, I think my big one that I was like that feeling is,
Mixon.
and it's probably Le'Veon, man.
Okay.
Just seeing that he is in the tops of receiving backs right now was kind of shocking to me. Not that should be, he was a great receiver in Pittsburgh, but I didn't realize how they were utilizing so much in New York. And I think that he has to be the key player in this game. I know Belichick will try to shut him down, but even when it gets to we need to throw the ball, I think he plays a key factor in that as well.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I don't hate that play. It's just I know Bill and that's what he does. Um, so moving on to receiver. I do not like this guy this week. I know he's literally the highest projected ownership play. I just have a feeling he's not going to have a great game. I think Slay will follow him around. It's Nelson Aguilar. He's only 3,600. He will be the number one receiver. And yeah, people think that Darius Slay was getting torched last week by Keenan Allen, but he really wasn't. Like yeah, he had 8 catches for 98 yards. Keenan Allen is 17 times better than Nelson Aguilar. Philip Rivers is better than Carson Wentz. And Carson Wentz has this guy named Zach Ertz that he actually likes more than anybody on this planet. Um, I actually will be a lot under the field with Nelson Aguilar because his projected ownership right now is at 35.3%. And to me, that's just outrageous. And it's disrespect to Darius Slay. And I don't like it. How do you feel about Nelson Aguilar?
I don't like him at all. I played him last week as a single game play.
Oh, yeah.
I like him in a single game play because he's such a flyer. But now that he's the number one receiver, I do not like him whatsoever in either formats. I don't like him in showdowns or standard. Um, it's just not a good play to me. I think you're right. Slay's a top corner in the league. Um, not that he can't be burned or whatnot, but he's gonna play good defense. We saw it last week. I don't who did Detroit play last week?
The Chargers.
Philip Rivers. We saw it try to force that ball in the end zone, and Slay can't. I mean, they were testing him all game, and he comes up with a big pick at the end of the game. Um, I don't think that they make that mistake. I don't think they test Slay and
Yeah.
think they can force things into him. I don't see it being the right play. I think they try to get the ball running. They do Philadelphia type things and then get the play action going and hit Ertz. I think Ertz is the play there. If you're going to play a Philly player, not Aguilar.
Yeah, I agree. I'm gonna be not fading him completely. Obviously, I'll have some because of his price tag, but I know running crunches and everything, you're just gonna get a crap ton of him. I just think it's not the right way to go. But that's just my personal opinion, and it may be a little homerism, where it's against Detroit. But listen, this is one of those games, right? They have the spread like they're supposed to beat Detroit, but this is the type of game where Detroit's supposed to lose that they are either gonna win it or play it down to the wire. I don't see it getting too crazy. It could be. I think it's a pace down game. Should be pretty slow paced. Detroit's a really slow paced team. Um, and then they get the running the ball for Philly. I can see them getting. We can get gashed on the ground. I just through the air. I don't see it going too out of control to make him. To me, he's got to score 2 touchdowns for me to even want to touch him. To be honest, I just don't see what everybody else sees, but I'm also not as good as everybody else at this. So, um, from there, the number one receiver for me this week, I have no idea. I really want to lean towards Mike Evans. In that game, I know you're gonna probably be all on that wagon. You love some Mike Evans action. Um, but against that defense, why not?
Yeah, I agree. Mike Evans, he is due for a big game, and his price tag, he is cheaper than Chris Godwin this week, and he has much higher upside. Chris Godwin's a great receiver. I love Chris Godwin. I've loved him since I saw him in Hard Knocks. But when it comes to production, touchdowns, big play opportunity, Mike Evans is the play, and he is cheaper than Godwin. And stacking him with Winston, I'm all on board with that.
Yeah, definitely agree with that one. In his same price range, well, let's see if there's anybody up here that I really like. Obviously, Hopkins is Hopkins, even though he kind of burned me a little bit last week, but it's Hopkins. He should be fine. Amari Cooper, I mean, he could have a great game. Dak can have an amazing game. It could limit Zeke a bit. So being contrarian, you could go with the stack with them, Cooper and Dak instead of getting to Zeke. Almost cheaper, you know what I mean? But yeah, from there, I just don't. There's not a ton of plays I love. Julio's gonna get his. Um, Going down a little bit. We touched on him a little bit. I really like Sammy Watkins this week. He's gonna be really underowned for what he is to me. So when he came out of college from Clemson, I really wanted him to be a Detroit Lion. And then his first couple years at Buffalo, I was like, thank God we didn't get Sammy Watkins. But now he's healthy. He's on the field with the best quarterback in the league. Um, he's seeing tons of targets. He's he's just everything you want, and he's running in that slot most of the time where um, who was it? Christian Kirk and Larry Fitzgerald last week had over 100 yards combined out of the slot last week, and I think a touchdown or two. Um, so I think that they're gonna get cooked, man, by Sammy Watkins. I could see him having a 200-yard game, and I'm not kidding about that. I really do think he's gonna have a monster game. Um, but there's a lot of mouths to feed, or that, well, it doesn't matter who he throws it to. They just score touchdowns. So as long as this goes, a couple go to Sammy, I'm definitely okay with it for his price tag at 68. Are you on the little Sammy wagon train with me or no?
I'm not a ton, but it's not for any reason, and maybe it's just biased. I don't know. Um, because I've seen Sammy Watkins even when he was in Buffalo. Um, I felt like he would have that game where he'd have 3 touchdowns, 200 yards, and then I wouldn't see him for 6, 7 more games. He'd have a catch or two for 10 yards and nothing else. So I might be biased. This is the first time I've seen the production that he had. Like even last year in Kansas City, same way. It was like he'd have 8 game and then just flops the rest of the time. So I really just hate me in general because he'll kill me if I play him. But if you didn't play him week 1, then you weren't winning. So
Yeah.
If he has a game that you project, man, he could be that guy that really just turns the table for you.
Yeah, definitely agree with that. Let's see. There's obviously the receiver position is just there's so many good plays on any given week. It's not like the running back position where you have your top 5 and it's like that's solidified, you know. There's just so many good receivers and good plays throughout the week. I'm really high on the Marquise Brown this week as well. I know he's a little nicked up. We talked about this game prior to the just over the week basically, and I told you that I'm all over this game. It's scary from like oh my goodness, it's Baltimore's defense against Kansas City, but to me it's Kansas City's offense that is just there's nobody that can stop them other than the guy with the the hoodie on. You know who I'm talking about. It's the only guy I have faith in stopping Pat Mahomes, like they did last year. But I think this game's going to be a shootout. Marquise Brown is just seeing crazy amount of usage. Um, Ever since he got his 15 or his 14 snaps in week 1, he's just been getting a ton of usage, and his upside is obviously we've seen his upside. It's crazy. So I'm definitely on his train a little bit.
I agree with you. I didn't have him on my list, but I am definitely not opposed to some Marquise Brown. He is a home run player. He can give you 35, 40 points on a great day like week 1. And this is the game. I mean, this is the game that it should happen. Kansas City gives up big plays. If this turns into a shootout like it should be, I expect that he'll get his targets, and it just takes one play. He's gone for 70 yards and a touchdown.
Yeah, and The thing I'm a little worried about the game is I think it's supposed to be raining, but I've done this over the years, man. I faded rain games and they just end up torching me. So I'm not doing it this year. I'm going by the numbers and whatever the numbers tell me to do, I'm doing it. So we'll see how that goes. Where you at on receiver as far as like decent plays this week that you think?
Well, we talked about Mike Evans. He's on my list. I'll probably play him quite a bit. Uh, I'm really high on Julio Jones.
Oh, really? Okay.
I am. Yeah, I he his price tag is lower than I've seen it over probably the last 2 years. Part of that is probably his production over the last 2 weeks, but his targets have been there. I think he is 11th in the league with targets total out of all positions, which is pretty solid. And we know what he's capable of. In my opinion, he's probably top three receivers in the league. So I'm super high on him just because I think is lower than where it should be. If it were higher, I probably would not be as high as I am on him. But also, I love that Matt Ryan play, so I'm favored towards that stack.
Okay.
That's something that I'm pretty high on. I'm also as a sneaky little play. I think you kind of got me digging into this and going down that rabbit hole, but I didn't look at ownership projection on this, but John Ross was impressive.
Yeah.
More impressive than I've ever seen. Like obviously he's been a flop for what it was 2 years in the league. This is his third year, I believe.
Yeah.
And he's just been a flop. And then all of a sudden he touches the top 20 in targets out of all positions. I think you told me last night. Was he the highest in air yards right now?
I believe so. Yeah.
Yeah, highest in air yards. He is also amazingly out of the 18 targets that he's got over the first 2 weeks. He's
20.
at 14 completions.
Got 20 targets.
20 targets, somewhere there. So I believe it's 14 completions or some number around there, close to 200 yards receiving. He's been impressive. They don't really have many other weapons in Cincinnati. He's their big player. The Buffalo defense is tough, so there is that to consider. But I'm not opposed to playing some John Ross.
Yeah, I agree with some John Ross. Yeah, he's got 20 targets in 2 weeks. Prior to this, you're just struggling to get him any catches in a single game. He has 11 catches total this year, 3 touchdowns in 170 yards or 270 yards. I'm sorry. So the man is just playing ungodly, and I'm sitting here counting them by myself, and up top it tells me. Cool. So yeah, he's averaging 31 fantasy points per game, which is just unreal. I would never think of the day that I said John Ross is actually a good player. But maybe
Yeah,
he was
John.
a little
So I
nicked up.
just kind of looking at those stats. I pulled them up while you were talking there, and I didn't realize this, but obviously Jacksonville played on Thursday, and John Ross is 7 yards behind DJ Chark at 277 yards. So he is damn near exceeding yardage of a 3 game player already. And that to me is impressive. So yeah, he's over 50% completion rate, leading the league in receiving yards, and probably let me just pull this real quick here. He is second by a tenth of a yard in average yards per reception, which is impressive.
Yeah.
So
Definitely like some John Ross, and he's only at 2.3 ownership right now percent.
that
So
that's solid.
yeah,
Yeah,
that's
I'm
exciting
definitely
to go for.
yeah. What's his price tag at right now?
It's not that bad. I just had it up. It's 5,100, so
Yeah,
not terrible by any stretch.
I, I definitely think he's a solid play if his ownership is where you said. Um,
Yeah,
I think it's definitely a play that you could win money with.
yeah, I agree. So we'll just knock this out real quick. Um, Randall Cobb and or Devin Smith, whatever one you want, whatever one you pick. they should get the targets. Michael Gallup was the leading receiver there in targets. I don't know which one to take, honest to God, at this point. Cobb is more owner. He's got like a point ownership more, like 1.0. He's supposed to be at like 9.5, and Devin Smith's at like 8.5%. So I mean, there's that, and then Cobb's I think a little bit more expensive than him as well. Let's see. Cobb is 46 and Devin Smith's 1200. In a week where it won't hurt to pay up at like running back, I could see getting to a little bit more Devin Smith and maybe stack both of them with Dak Prescott type stack. Um, but I like both of them. I just don't know which one I'm gonna be more on this week. A lot of people, not a lot, but 9 and 8% are pretty high numbers for some average wide receiver play. But do you have any shares in those guys, do you think, this week?
I definitely think I do. I'll probably the question I have, and I don't similar to you, I don't know the answer to, is where are they going to line up? Yeah, I assume based off Cobb's career that he's going to line up in the slot, but in the past, back when he was with Green Bay, I did see them move him to wide receiver 2 and line him up outside when receivers went down, and he didn't produce well out there. Um, he always played really well in the slot, but we want the wide receiver 2, right? So I think if Smith plays the wide receiver 2, I think I take him. If Cobb is out there, I might avoid it. I don't know. I think I'm higher on Smith. I think that's my answer. I think I just answered it by talking myself out of Cobb, just because historically, he played with Aaron Rodgers, arguably one of the, if not the greatest quarterback in the league. Um, and he just didn't do well in a wide receiver 1 or 2 role. He always played really well in that slot role.
Yeah. Yeah, I kind of agree. I believe the way they'll be doing it is um, Amari Cooper on the outside with Devin Smith and then with Cobb in the slot. But the way it's put out here on their depth chart, it's going to be Cobb and Amari outside with Devin in the slot. But it shouldn't stay like that. But yeah,
If they're going to line up Smith outside, which I agree, I think that's probably what they would do. I think that Smith is probably the replacement for Gallup, or how you say his name, Gallup or Galloop? I don't
it's
know.
Gallup, dude.
Man, I don't know. Let's call him Galloop, whatever.
Yeah.
Um, lining up Smith out there, I think that's the play. I don't think they have any intention of making Cobb an outside receiver. He's not an outside receiver.
Yeah.
He could be deadly in the slot, but I think that Dak, the targets show that even though he has Amari Cooper, he favors that wide receiver 2 position based on route tree or whatever. He finds that it's his target, and if that holds true, then Smith should be a good play.
Yeah. Any flyer wide receivers that you're on?
Not really flyer. I do like Larry Fitz. I'm okay with this week. The matchup isn't great, but his production's been really good under this offense this year. I don't think he's had under 100 yards both game 1 and game 2. I think he had over 100 yards. And he's getting a ton of targets. It's not really a flyer, but his price tag I think is 5,100. Super cheap for him.
Not bad.
Outside of that, I would say John Ross is probably my biggest flyer. It's not really much of a flyer, but historically it would have been. No, I didn't really see much that caught my eye in the deep pool of receivers. How about you? How you feeling about some deep entry?
So I have a guy that it's annoying because like I do my research, on my own for the most part, and then like I listen to podcasts and stuff with people, and I hate when I have a play and he gets brought up a ton in the podcast because that normally leads to a lot of ownership and stuff. But Demir Bird for Arizona, the number 3 receiver, he is on the field, on the offensive field with Arizona 93% of the snaps. That goes with Kirk's 93 and Larry Fitz is 95%. Um, he's got the same amount of snaps as Kirk and one less than Larry Fitzgerald. Um, he's 3K, literally the bare minimum you can get at a receiver. With the talent at running back this week, or my crazy Mahomes stacks, like I can see myself getting to quite over the field on Damiere Byrd. He is supposed to be 6.4%. That's the ownership projection right now. Um, I'm just super high on him this week just because of the opportunity. We always talk about that. Like, what do you want in a guy that is 3K? You know, you just want something out of him. He's averaging 9.4 points per game. He's got 10 catches on the year, 14 targets. I'm all in. Like 93%, give me some shares, you know. He should be fine. As far as 3K, what do we need? 15 points out of him for him to be a steal, basically. But the field will be a little bit on him as well. But that's my guy this week. That's super cheap and that most normal people don't know who he is, but he's on the field all the time.
No, I don't hate it at all. Especially seeing how much he's on. That's a big thing that we always talk about is opportunity.
Yeah.
The week's over. Um, Run numbers and numbers. If he's on the field 90 snaps, um, that's opportunity, more opportunity. And 10 points at that price tag. I think you said 9.5 or something per game.
Yeah.
That's just one play away. A touchdown puts you at that 15 points. So
Yeah, I agree. And Kyler's been throwing pretty well. So he's dropping 300 like it's nothing nowadays. So we'll see. I like it, but moving on from there, I don't think there's a ton to talk about with tight end. As normal, they're really, you have your big four, now five. I'm assuming we kind of need to add Mark Andrews in that at this point. We'll see how the next few weeks shake out, but I really like Kelsey. I told you I'm all on this game, so that leads me to a lot more shares of Andrews, double stacking the tight ends this week. How do you feel about tight end? Where are you at?
Um, I'm always on the Kelsey. I don't think you go wrong with him. He's gonna get looks.
Yeah.
Um, I had him on there. I'm super high on Kelsey. I have as my number 3. Just due to the price point and um that's really it, I guess, is price point. So I have them in. There's 3 to 5. I think you said I have four guys that I'm them high on. They're probably the same 4 that you're high on. I have Zach Ertz as my number 1 though. Actually, I have Zach Ertz and Evan Ingram tied for my number 1.
Ooh.
I don't know. I'll probably split them. Big thing is target share here. Ingram, I think they're going to stack the box against Saquon with a new quarterback coming into the game. Historically, when I see new quarterbacks, I see them try to throw blitzing, a lot of disguised blitzes and things like that to try to rattle that new quarterback and get pressure on him, and hope he makes mistakes, which if he plays well, that won't happen. But it'll force those quick passes to tight ends and things like that. So he's already second in the league as far as tight ends targets, next to Zach Ertz at 22 targets. They're both, Zach Ertz and Evan Ingram, are in the top 10 in the league with target shares out of all positions. In perspective, Kelsey is sitting at 17 targets.
Yeah.
I'm not opposed to all of those. And Mark Andrews as well. Mark Andrews has been productive. He's up there with 17 targets. He's made the most of them. But I think all 4 of those talent tight ends. I think Evan Ingram's a freak of nature. I think Zach Ertz is a beast, and Kelsey is probably the best tight end in the league. It's weird that I didn't put Kittle in here at all. Didn't even talk about Kittle. Is San Fran playing
They are,
tomorrow?
and they are dropping points.
They are.
I think they're averaging 36 points per game. Um, he's not getting as many targets as I wanted, I think. I think that's why I didn't really mess with him. Yeah, so week 1, he just had an overwhelming amount. He had 10 targets, 8 catches. Week 2, he only had 3 targets. We were both, I think, pretty high on Kittle last week. and it kind of torched us. He really didn't get too much going. Um, he's okay, and like he's a great talent. Like there's five tight ends now, but the top four are the top four. Like Andrews to me isn't on the same level as Kelsey, Ertz, Kittle, and Ingram. Um, they're all. It's crazy how the tight end position turned out nowadays compared to the old, where they're all freaks of nature. Like when Antonio Gates was in the league, we're like, oh my goodness, what the heck can't this guy do? You know? And now everybody is like becoming that. Um, so I mean, I don't hate getting to Kittle if it happens, and yeah, I'm just cool with any of those guys. I do really like the Evan Ingram play. And you know I'm high on Zach Ertz. I just
Yeah.
actually left him for you because I knew he was going to be your number one, so I just kind of avoided him. Um, but I actually kind of like Vance McDonald this week as well. So when dude came in last week, Kittle, Vance McDonald had 2 touchdowns. Um, I don't recall him getting targets. I can't remember at what point Ben came out and came in. I think it was like near halftime though. But Vance McDonald kind of broke the slate last night. We talked about this, and if you or last week, if you didn't have Vance or who were the other tight ends?
There was actually I still got it pulled up here. There was 4 tight ends. You had to have one of those 4. It's in the top. I think it was top 50. I let me pull
Yeah,
these up real quick. Yeah, so if you didn't have Mark Andrews, Travis Kelsey, Vance McDonald, or Will Disley last week, you would not have placed in the top 50 lineups out of any combination.
yeah. Without he took out the Patriots defense because that's normally an outlier. That normally does not happen. So yeah, so Vance McDonald definitely seen targets when he got in the game with Mason Rudolph. Rudolph's not a bum. He's not great, but they're in a decent matchup. I wouldn't say San Francisco's just overwhelmingly great. I do like San Francisco's defense with that being said, but I also like a little bit of Vance McDonald this week. I'll be higher than the field probably on him just because he's one of those guys. He's not a bad athlete at all. He's a really good athlete. He can break one for a ton of yards. So I'm just from there though. I'm honestly not really on anybody else in the tight end position. You?
Yeah, Vance McDonald is one of those players. I guess I don't think of him much because Ben just doesn't throw to tight ends. But you're right, he's out, and I just looked at his numbers. He had 7 completions on 7 targets to Vance McDonald. And if anybody remembers, what was it, 2 or 3 years ago, Vance McDonald on San Francisco was a beast. And he was that guy similar to George Kittle,
Yep.
not Kittle, obviously, but he was very productive in San Francisco as a tight end. He got traded over to Pittsburgh, and Pittsburgh just never really utilized him. Uh, Pittsburgh just doesn't utilize tight ends. I don't know why. Well, I don't want to say Pittsburgh. I feel like Big Ben doesn't utilize tight ends as much as he should or could. He's always been the big play quarterback. He's throwing downfield. He's looking for that play, which is why Juju Smith and Antonio Brown were so successful. Quarterback who can throw a deep ball probably better than almost anybody in the league. But unfortunately for tight ends, it doesn't pan out. Other plays in the tight end that I don't hate. I didn't really go high on them, but I don't hate Austin Hooper for the price tag at 3,600. He's one of the highest tight end target shares. I don't necessarily hate. Let me see the matchup here before I get ahead of myself. But I'm not hating Darren Waller. What's their matchup like? I
They're
forget off
playing
the top of my head.
Minnesota. I don't like Waller because of that scenario, but I don't hate
Yeah,
him either. And he's starting to get priced up now. He's at
yeah,
4,100, so he's 500 more than Austin Hooper, and just give me Austin Hooper all day in that scenario.
yeah. I would take Austin Hooper over Darren Waller. A sneaky little play, and I think this one you might even have him on your sleepers. Is T.J. Hawkinson against Philly. TJ Hawkinson against Philly. Philly is one of they've always been this way ever since what's his name became their defensive coordinator, Detroit's
Jim
old coach Schwartz. Ever since Schwartz was their defensive coordinator, they've been a blitz heavy we'll give up the big play, but we're going to force you to make a big play type of player or type of team. And they've always given up big passing yards. They've always been really good against the run. They've always given up big passing yards, and they force teams to make a mistake. That spells production for Hawkinson.
Yeah.
So I don't mind Hawkinson at 3,500 for a tight end. I think he has opportunity. There's not much else outside of Hooper in that price range that I would even consider. So if you're looking at that 3,500 to the 3,000 to 4,000 price range, I don't see another tight end in there that I would probably take outside of Hooper
Okay.
over Hawkinson.
Yeah, I just want to touch on a few tight end points. I don't hate Will Dissly this week, but I'm probably not going to have him because of the other people we talked about. Other than that, though, I think Jack Doyle is outsnapping Eric Ebron like 3-1 or 2-1. I would avoid Eric Ebron if you can. I know it's in a good position, like a good scenario for him to get touchdowns, but he's so touchdown dependent. I just don't like it. And to be honest, that game's only they're only projected to score 24 points. Indiana or Jesus, I said Indiana, Indianapolis. So I mean, they're not at a crazy total. I just would avoid it altogether. Maybe a little Jason Witt in action, but probably avoiding that as well. Other than that, yeah, to me, tight end's pretty cut and dry. It's probably the easiest position for me always to decipher.
Yeah.
So defensively, I don't really care. I don't like to talk about it, but ever since last week, I feel like maybe we should drop some dimes in a hat here. Like realistically, it's the most volatile position. Anything can happen. Anybody can throw 6 picks in a game on accident. People can miss passes and it can bounce off their forehead, pick 6. Obviously the Cowboys this week against Miami. People are going to be all over that. But DK finally priced the defenses where they need to be. The Dallas Cowboys defense is $4,300 this week against Miami, which is where it should be. Like it shouldn't be 36, and 36 is the highest, placed defense. It shouldn't be like that. Even the Patriots at 3,800 this week. They're starting to price their defense up because the defense last week killed all the pro players that I know of. It just destroyed them. Like it wasn't even close. Other than that, though, I like Dallas this week, obviously. I don't hate the Patriots against the Jets. That's another pretty obvious one. But some ones that I kind of like, depending on the site, because right now we're talking about DK, but I was like delving into delving into some Yahoo. I know the 49ers are super cheap on there. With their pass rush and their defense is pretty good. I like them down there. Even in here, I don't hate them. Against Pittsburgh, yeah, it's Pittsburgh, but it's no Big Ben Pittsburgh. James Conner's running terribly. He said he should be good to go, but so I would say maybe the 49ers. And then I always, for the most part, would like the Chargers because of their pass rush. Joey Bosa and Melvin Ingram, probably arguably two of the best two in the league, and then they're on the same team. So I really like them this week. They're pretty cheap, and I think they're getting underowned. Not really underowned. They're at 6.9%. What are you doing? So yeah, basically with them, I like the Chargers against Houston. Houston's offensive line is just terrible. So they give up a ton of sacks. I just like the matchup. What about you?
Defense. I've kind of gone to a new strategy with defense, and because it is what you said, that any defense can put up points on any given Sunday. I mean, realistically, the Jets defense could, unlikely, but that's a bad example. It's Tom Brady. He's not throwing 6 picks, but Dak Prescott could throw 3 interceptions that go for touchdowns, and all of a sudden the Dolphins have 20 points on defense, even though they gave up 40 points. I wouldn't bank on that. That's a bad pick. Don't take the Dolphins defense against Dallas unless you have to. But point being is that I build my team and then I kind of go to the defense and say, okay, where can I play? And within that price range, I will and say, okay, what do I like best? Um, that being said, teams I hate, I hate the Jets against New England. I don't like the Dolphins against Dallas. I absolutely hate that. Um, I favor defenses that are playing against first time quarterbacks. So even though it might not be seem like a great play, I do um, I like San Francisco against Pittsburgh, which I think will be a good play. I think that first time quarterbacks tend to throw an interception or two. I don't hate Tampa Bay against New York Giants, even though I do think Jones is going to be a good quarterback. I think he might throw a pick or two. First game in the NFL, different schemes. Preseason is all typically pretty basic coverage schemes.
Yeah.
So I think he's going to see things he hasn't seen. So I like any of the first time quarterbacks. I do like same thing with New Orleans. I like the matchup there with Seattle against them, even though Seattle's coverage hasn't been the same as it was. They have a really good pass rush. I don't believe in Teddy Bridgewater. I didn't think he was great in Minnesota. I don't think he's going to be great as a backup to Drew Brees. So those are the matchups I think I would lean towards if I choose them. Just kind of depends on where you fall.
Yeah, I agree with that. It's just whoever you can afford. Normally, other than Miami, where nobody's going to be playing Miami. But yeah, so basically that wraps it up. It should be a good slate, man. I have a lot of plays that I'm really excited about. Hopefully crushing week 3, like we should. Um, so yeah, I think that will do the video. Um, Thanks, Vince, for hanging out with us and dropping that good old Vincent knowledge on us. We appreciate it.
Yeah, I
Nice to
appreciate
have
you
you here.
having me on, and
Hopefully,
always don't mind sharing my biased opinions.
that is true. Um, yeah, so hopefully now that he just had a fresh baby, he can get on some more of these before he has to go back to work on Sundays. So, yeah, thanks, Vince. Basically that's it. If you guys have any questions, drop some comments in below. I'll try to answer them tomorrow before the games start. I'll be hanging out with Vince, so I'll be able to ask him if any questions are directed at him. Um, Drop a follow. Well, I guess subscribe. Like the video, ring the notification bell. We'll be dropping content mostly every week for videos like this. I appreciate you guys hanging out. Thank you so much, and peace.